So there's something that I don't talk about publicly very often, and partly because it's new, partly because it just never really comes up. But over Father's Day weekend, we hosted a large group of people and their kids at our house for a Father's Day cookout and swim. And it had never really dawned on me that I had never really told anyone that I stopped drinking. And during the course of like this 3 or 4 hour barbecue, like it was at our house, but like my girlfriends kept saying, "Hey, can I get you a drink?" Or, "Hey, like you're cooking, like let me get you a glass of wine." And I was like, "No, no." And then finally they were like, "Are you not drinking?" And then I said to myself, "No, I'm not. I actually don't drink anymore. I stopped drinking 5 months ago." And they said, "Why?" And it hadn't really dawned on me until today, this very moment, which is why I decided to make a video and a blog about it, that's actually a pretty significant decision in my life. And I hadn't really shared it. And so I spent some time thinking about like, what were all of the reasons that I did stop drinking? You see, my husband gave up drinking almost 7 years ago when I was pregnant with our first child, Jasper, and he did it out of solidarity. And I was like, "Great perk, DD, like awesome." I know I'm not a big drinker. I'm really just like bubbles. But in general, it was like, it never really dawned on me that's something I could and should do too until earlier this year. And on early February, I think it was like February 5th to be exact, I was rushed to the ER and was forced to get an emergency gallbladder removal surgery. It was not a surprise. I had known I had gallbladder issues and gallstones for years, developed them during pregnancy, tried to cure them naturally, tried to change my diet, was holding them off for a while, but due to stress and my seemingly inability to figure out how to relieve stress from my body, I kept having these horrendous gallbladder attacks that were awful, like worst thing imaginable that I've ever been through, much worse than childbirth. And on this very particular day, it was so bad, my husband had to take me to the ER, and one of these oversized gallstones was stuck in the valve. And we had two options. One was to sit and pray that it would come back into my gallbladder, which is what happened, luckily. The other option is that it would not have come back into the gallbladder. It would have passed through the valve, it would have burst and caused sepsis, and I likely could have died. And there were two things that happened. One, in the midst of unbearable pain, I made a promise, a very big one, a covenant, in fact, and I don't know what spurred this exact thought in my brain at the time, but this is what God put in my heart. And so I made a covenant with God, and I said, "God, like, if you can just help me through this, bring this stone back into my gallbladder, I will never drink again. I will never drink again." And I don't know why that's what came to my mind. There's lots of things. I'll give up social media. I'll never watch TV. It's like, there could have been tons of things, but that was what was on my heart. That's what God laid on my heart. And he did deliver. And I was able to have the emergency surgery and now recovered, and 5 months sans alcohol. And then I started really thinking, like, what was it about that particular part of my life that was on my heart, that's the thing that I was being prompted to give up. That was a thing that I was prompted to sacrifice in that moment. And here's a few things that I thought might be helpful if you're struggling with this in your own journey. Not because you have a problem. I think that's a completely different conversation. I'm just a social drinker. And that's the problem. And here's what I discovered with some just reflective thinking is, one, instead of going to the word, instead of going to prayer, I was going to grab a glass of wine if I needed to decompress or de-stress or relax. If I needed to just take a breath, it would happen with a glass of wine. I would take a bath. I would grab a glass of wine. I would sit outside and watch my kids play with a glass of wine. I'd go talk it out with my girlfriends over a glass of wine. And that's a problem, right? If that's my go-to, that's a problem for me. It was a problem for me. That was number one. Number two is that I felt socially awkward without a drink. And that really caused me to ask myself, where am I hanging out that I feel, that's not real, but I feel like I have to have a drink. There's almost a comfort level of it's so common, it's so all around us that I felt like an outsider if I didn't have one. And so I really started evaluating like, who am I spending all my time with and what environments am I spending all my time in, that everything that I could think of that I would go to socially actually involved drinks. And then I made some really intentional decisions to change some individual settings and also change the environment settings, right? I don't go to happy hours. I didn't go to happy hours before. I'm not even talking about that, but it's like business networking, right? Over drinks or any sort of educational event has an after hours. I'm talking about things that I'm going for personal development, still infiltrated all around me with a drink. Like you walk through the airport, I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and at 8 a.m, the bars are open and there's breakfast mimosas, breakfast margaritas. And I'm like, I've never been so in tune to how alcohol is all around until I don't drink it anymore. But it's a fascinating thing that I realized. It's like, man, I really need to change how I'm interacting so that I don't find myself in those socially awkward places where I grab a drink just for the sake of fitting in. That was a problem for me. So 2 things around that is I do things that it would be weird to drink. Right? I meet up to go on big hikes, right? Taking a bottle of wine on a big hike, not in your favor, right? Bike rides, yoga class, bar class, all these things that it's like, yes, I could have been doing that, but it's so easy to just go to the local, cute restaurant and grab a glass of wine. That's not what I do anymore. I don't do evening meetings. I do breakfast meetings. So I might drink more coffee today than I did 5 months ago, but I don't drink alcohol. Caffeine is next thing I'll tackle. But then the other thing that I did that was really helpful for me was I found my substitute. And this was the great tip from my husband. He goes, find that favorite drink that makes you feel like you've got that effervescent, bubbly drink that you love. And I'm like, what a great idea. Right. And it's like so simple. I do 3-4 sparkling water with a splash of cranberry. And it's great. I put it in a fancy glass, makes me feel like I fit in. And that too, just of itself, of like feeling like you have to fit in because you have a drink, it sheds some light on the surroundings and the people that you're spending time with. And there is nothing wrong with having a casual drink. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying for me, it had become something that I depended on to fit in. It had become something that I depended on to relax or decompress or de-stress. That is the problem. I ain't got no problem with all my girlfriends who love to have a glass of wine. I too used to love that. It had become a problem for me, which is why I had to go. And I share this for 2 reasons. One, I never talked about it before. And 2, I didn't really think I had a problem. And the truth is, I didn't have a problem with alcohol. I was using alcohol as this thing in my life that was preventing me from doing the more important thing, which is for me, spending time in the Word, spending time in prayer, spending time outside, spending time in conversation, not taking sips. So if that's helpful to you today, then I'm grateful that I'm willing to share this. And if you've got questions, then put them in the comments and I'll answer them. So here's to 5 months, no drinking for me. And I'm exploring all of the different types of sparkling waters. And so if you want to know the best ones out there, hit me up on social media and I'll tell you.